Thanks, Blair and Johnny, for that great song. Here Comes the Sun. It's on its way. That is undeniable. It has been here kind of playing this crazy game of peekaboo with us for the last month where it's like, I'm here! No, just kidding. I'm here, it's gonna be warm, wear your tank top. No, just kidding, put on your winter coat. At times I have felt a little suspicious of our sun and of not sure if I could rely on if it was actually going to be warm, and I feel a little sorry for my blueberry blossoms and my apricot tree because I'm not sure that they survived our latest cold snap. But tomorrow is the spring equinox, and regardless of what the yo-yoing temperatures may do, the sun is here with us for the next 6 months. And that is this underlying truth that we can rely on underneath the yo-yoing temperatures. And that's the story of spring. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, since tomorrow is the equinox. The story of spring is the persistence of light. That regardless of what outer appearances may look like, in spring, we can count on the light growing. We can anchor ourselves faithfully in that. There are going to be more flowers, there will be more warmth, there will be more green, and there will be more life. And that's what we celebrate on the spring equinox. And there are lots of people all around the world of different cultures and different faith traditions that celebrate the spring equinox. And I got really interested in finding out a little bit more about how other people around the world celebrate the spring equinox. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a kind of interfaith cultural history piece here. But there are common themes among all of them, and those, of course, are hope, renewal, starting off with a clean slate, and new beginnings. So tomorrow, being the spring equinox, it's the Persian New Year called Nowruz. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. And that literally means new day. And it starts at the very moment of the spring equinox, which is, in our time zone, 6:28 a.m. tomorrow. Nowruz is celebrated in Iran, Turkey, Albania, and Afghanistan. And it's celebrated by cleaning house, repairing broken items, putting a fresh coat of paint on your house, and going to visit family and friends and share gifts and delicious food. And then in India and Nepal, they're celebrating the festival of Holi, which is the festival of colors. And it actually happened last Monday, but it's still centered around this time of spring and the light returning. Has anybody ever been to the festival of colors in India? Well, you know more than I know about it. But what I learned is that it's based on this story in Hindu mythology of good triumphing over evil, and specifically faith triumphing over ego. There was a boy of great faith, and he survived being brought into a fire and held there by someone of great ego, and he survived through his faith. And that's what's being celebrated in the Festival of Colors. It's a time to forgive and repair broken relationships. It's a time to rid oneself of old errors. And it's celebrated by throwing colored powder and colored water on your friends and strangers. Anyone in the street is fair game. If you are out, you might get colored, and you probably will. It's the pictures that I saw of it are beautiful and gorgeous. All of these rich colored powders and waters just being thrown at each other like a paintball fight in the streets, but it's all done in the spirit of love and celebration. And of course, many of us know that the spring is also time for the Jewish holiday of Passover. And Passover celebrates the liberation of the Israelites from Egypt after generations of slavery. And so again, we see this theme of renewal, new opportunities being liberated from the past. And it's celebrated by cleaning house thoroughly, specifically of all leavened grain or fermented grain. And on a metaphysical level, there's the talk of removing puffiness from the soul, puffiness of ego and arrogance, the way that yeast puffins up the bread. And then we have the Christian spring holiday of Easter, which of course is celebrating the story of Jesus returning to life after 3 days after being killed. Again, the story of renewal, this resurgence of life. We see this theme. And then finally, there is this ancient Greek story of Persephone and Demeter. How many know this story of Persephone and Demeter? Okay, some, but not all, so I'll share. Persephone was this beautiful, vibrant girl, and she was the daughter of Demeter. And Demeter is the Greek goddess of the harvest, of the crops, of fertility. And Persephone was out gathering flowers one day, and Hades, the god of the underworld, saw her, fell instantly in love with her, and captured her and took her down to the underworld. And she stayed down there for a while. She refused to eat because she knew that if she ate anything in the underworld, she would be required to stay there. But after being there for quite a while, she got a little hungry, and Hades offered her a pomegranate. And she ate 6 seeds from the pomegranate before she was rescued and brought back up to her mother. But then Hades came to claim her and said, "She ate 6 seeds. I demand to have her for 6 months out of the year." And so Persephone is required to stay in the underworld for 6 months out of the year. When she returns, Demeter, the goddess of harvest and crops, celebrates and bedecks the earth with flowers to celebrate the return of her daughter. And then when her daughter has to go back down to the underworld, she cries, she neglects the crops, and that's why they die in winter. Right. So an interesting thing that I noticed when I was looking through all of these stories is that there is this constant theme of the victory of light over the dark. And it's often put in these kind of battle-like terms of light wins, and that's why we celebrate. And it really is based on this idea of good and evil, the goodness of light and the evil of the dark, or the goodness of life and the evil of death. And what I love about unity is that we do some shifting on those terms. And in fact, we just say, it's all good. It's all good. The whole shebang, the whole thing, it's all God. It's all God, and God is good. It's our very first unity principle. It's the statement of faith that we say every week. There is one power and one presence in the universe and in my life, God, the good, omnipotent. And so as we look at these stories of spring and look at how we take them into our lives and how we step into this time of light and celebration, from a unity perspective, I want to do it from honoring the gifts of all the seasons, honoring the gifts of both the light and the dark, and all the spaces in between, because of course it's not just two things. We have this whole rich, broad, bright, brilliant life. There's nothing to triumph over. It's just something to move through and move forward through. The cycle itself is sacred. That's what I've been repeating to myself over and over as I think about this spring, and also feeling the bouncing back and forth of warm and cold and warm and cold, just telling myself, the cycle is sacred. One is not better than the other. So when I think about the gifts and opportunities of each season, in the spring, of course, we have this regeneration, this emerging, this growing. It's a time for experimenting and seeing what's possible. In the summer, then, we get to explore the world that we've created. We get to continue creating and experimenting and working with all of the ideas that we've started to put into action. We get to experience flourishing and expressing ourselves in new ways. And then as summer wanes and the fall comes, we get to experience discerning, taking this whole bunch of abundance that we've created and see what's worth keeping, see what's worth harvesting, and see what we don't want to bring into our houses, separating the grain from the chaff, separating the fruit from the vine, and leaving the vine to compost and enrich the soil for next year. So fall gets to be this time of gathering and discarding and really choosing where we're going to set our focus. And then winter gets to be a time of resting. It gets to be a time of reflecting, of deepening our understanding of all that we've experienced through the year. It gets to be a time of incorporating our experiences and seeing what they mean for how we want to move forward. And what I love about living in this part of the world where we get to experience these very distinct seasons is that we get to go through these cycles, and to me it's like a beating heart, opening and closing, and opening and closing, and opening and closing again. And to me that creates this sense of forward movement of, okay, here I am in spring again, and I can look and see where I was in spring last year and see how much I've grown. Or here we are in summer again, and look how I've expanded my garden, or the garden of my life, however the metaphor applies. And so the turning of the seasons for me is this great opportunity to go through a process of gratitude, release, and intention. Gratitude for the section of the cycle that we've just wrapped up, releasing what we might be holding on to that's not going to serve us in the time ahead, and setting intention for what we're going to be doing in this next part of the cycle. And so I would love, because we are a spiritual community together on this path, I'd love to walk together through this process of gratitude, release, and intention. I'm going to be, in a little bit, I'm going to be giving you the invitation to turn to somebody near you and share some of your thoughts and experiences. And if that's not where you are this morning, if you're not wanting to share with somebody, feel free to just sit in your own space and ask yourself these questions and answer them for yourself. So we're going to start with gratitude for the gifts of winter. So winter, for I think many people, it's a hard one to feel gratitude for because it's so cold and dark. Although this winter we didn't have quite as much cold and dark as we're used to, but still winter can be hard. Just there's not much color in the world. There's not much light. It's cold. But the gifts of winter are stillness, rest, self-reflection, surrender to the unknown, and clarity. And so I invite you now to take just a minute to share with somebody near you, how did you experience the gifts of winter this past season? And so then, after gratitude, we get to release. We get to say, okay, we are done with winter. Yes, thank you for the gifts. We're moving forward. So when we think about what we can release from winter, sometimes the things that were gifts turn out to be a burden as we move forward into the spring. It's not time for sitting still anymore, and stillness can become stagnancy. Yeah. For me, in winter, I love seeking warmth and comfort and eating chocolate and fatty foods. Like, I just want to put on all of those layers, and it's a lot about, like, wrapping myself up with sumptuousness. But that, in the spring, can turn into indulgence and hoarding and, like, kind of gluttony in, not to speak of one of the 7 deadly sins, but that's kind of what it feels like. Is, you know, in winter it feels luxurious, and in spring it feels kind of gross. And then also in winter there is this sense of, like, accepting hardship, kind of accepting, yeah, this is a cold time, and I'm gonna do what it takes to get through it. I can't change that it's cold. I can't change that it gets dark at 5 o'clock at night. So I'm going to accept that. But in spring, that acceptance of hardship can turn into overlooking opportunities for hope and change, overlooking beauty, and kind of getting into this stepping back asceticism of like, I don't deserve beautiful things, and I can muscle through hard time. And so shifting into more of like okay, that is done. I don't have to accept hardship anymore. This is the time for creating new growth. And so as we think about that, as we think about things that served us in the winter that may not be serving us in the spring, now is the time when I ask you, what ways of winter are you ready to release as you step into spring? So our last one, this is going to be our last partner sharing, is talking about your intention for the spring. So we're stepping into a new time. Stepping into a new time is always a great opportunity for making a really clear choice of what do I want this to look like. We talk about in Unity how thought creates reality, and that's what intention is making a very clear choice rooted from our deep, deep wisdom of what is next. Where am I headed? And spring is especially great for this because that's what's happening in the entire world around us, is seeds of thought are being activated and getting ready to expand and put their roots down and send shoots up. So as we can get really clear on what seeds of thought do we want to plant in our life, now is the time to do it. Spring is all about new ideas, new ways of being. It's also about abundant possibility. We don't just plant one seed and hope that it will grow, right? Those of you who are gardeners or farmers know that you plant like at least 25% more seeds than what the plants that you actually want. And if you're like me, I actually plant like 50% to much, much more, and just see like in this particular soil, in this particular year, which of you seeds are going to grow and which of you are just going to stay in dormancy. And so spring is this time when we throw out a lot of possibilities and we say, what's possible? Let's see. It's not a time to say, here is where I am investing all of my energy right here, right now. No, fall is the time for focus. Spring is the time for abundant possibilities. So it's not a time for holding back. It's a time for expansiveness and experimentation rooted in wisdom. That's the other piece of it. It's not just like, hey, let's do everything. But it's like, what do I want to grow? What do I want to grow? And let's see what's possible. So your question for your partner is, what are your intentions for new growth this spring? It's so delightful to get to go through this journey in spiritual community. And for me, that is my joy of being a part of Unity, of this spiritual community, is how committed we are to honoring and celebrating and supporting each other's spiritual growth. Even though we may have many different paths, many different ways that we specifically tap into and celebrate the divine, we come here honoring each other for exactly where we are in our path. A friend told me once this quote, and I don't know where it comes from, but she said, "You don't get mad at a sapling for not being a tree." And that I pull that up so many times, and I don't know why exactly I thought of it just now, but just the fact that like we're all on our own journeys. We don't have any expectations of each other to be this like towering, brilliant, ancient forest. Like we are all in our own stages of growth. And here we are, this beautiful, thriving, vibrant community of people who are supporting and encouraging and witnessing each other as we go on these journeys. And I am honored to be a part of it and to witness all of you and be witnessed by all of you.